Yeah, because it looks like it's dancing back and forth.
My neighbor told me, so I drove down and checked it out.
Okay.
I called the city. And some guy.
Good.
Swung around. Whoa, yeah.
That's a news.
Well, I know we have at least one director who has a hard stop at 4 o'clock. So we have a quorum. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 2:37. I do want to make an announcement. I am filling in, chairing this meeting for Chair Rogers, who I believe is attending a momentous event in Sacramento, Mike McGuire's swearing in ceremony. So we wish them all the best. I'm glad that he could be there to represent not only Santa Rosa and Sonoma County and SCTA RCPA. So with that, let's go ahead and we don't have any teleconference disclosures on this time, right? So let's go ahead and then take a roll call of members present, please.
Certainly. Good afternoon, Board of Directors. We'll start with Director Melanie Bagby,
Present.
Director Janice Cater-Thompson,
Present.
Director Chris Corsi had informed me he'd be absent today. Director Gerard Giudice had informed me he would be absent today. Director Susan Harvey,
Here.
Director Errol Kelly, Director Sandra Lowe,
Here.
Director David Rabbit had informed me he wouldn't be here today. Director Rosa Reynosa,
Here.
Director Stephen Zolman,
Present.
and Vice Chair Hopkins.
Present.
And
I just want to say
members, we have a quorum.
thank you. And I just want to say thank you to every single director who is present to make us have the quorum so that we can get some important business done today. So it is very much appreciated. Thank you for your attendance. With that, we will go ahead and move to public comment on items not on the regular agenda. And I would invite you to speak. Good to see you, Dwayne.
Oh, thank
Did
you.
you say
for
dry
saying
in
that.
Roseland?
Oh, of course. We got it down. My name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. We have a creek that runs through there and the creek was rising. The topic I want to talk with today is about you folks helping to connect Santa Rosa and Roseland better to the county in the planning for active transportation. You probably don't realize this, but county taxpayers helped to buy almost 20 acres of land close to 12 years ago now, for what was supposed to be a bikeway greenway on the south side of Roseland Creek. And it actually came out of a plan called the Roseland Creek Concept Plan from 2004. So that's 20 full years ago. We've been talking about this and nothing has actually moved forward on it yet. So with an active transportation plan, we would think they'd be reaching out to the community that helped to get that land originally set aside. And nothing's really been happening yet. So luckily today I had a staff member from Sonoma County Transportation Authority tell me when the Santa Rosa transportation folks are going to be talking about this. They're not telling us in the community. It's really difficult and it's bothersome. So I'm hoping you folks, because you dole out some money to them occasionally, could lean on them a little and say, hey, let's have true, authentic community engagement and do good stuff. With that in mind, Roseland Creek is a natural climate solution. We've got a beautiful area there, and it's one of those areas we should be saving trees and doing carbon sequestration, all the good things that you folks talk about. But we can't get Santa Rosa to look into that either. And I realize that county employees will say, well, that's their bailiwick. But the whole thing comes down to you got major taxes passed in the past. So those two words kind of got difficult. Passed in the past. And they are supposed to be helping to get this better community engagement and getting these things coordinated. So all I'm asking you folks to do is to help with a coordinated effort to get those transportation approaches done. And it's really, I'll have to explain this in a way. We have a transit hub out there and very few people ride the bus. Very few people ride the bikes. Yet you're spending this money. So my hope is that what you can do is get more interest in people riding bikes, riding the buses, and doing the things that you are holding close to your heart, saying, yeah, this is why we're doing this. So you believe in it, I believe in it, but very few folks get on their bikes or on the buses. And the way to do that is to change it up and get that bikeway greenway put in, get all these other things going forward that we've talked about for over 20 years. It was just 20 years ago we got the final Roseland Creek Concept Plan actually approved by the city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment in person? Seeing none, I'll hand it over to Drew to see if there were any comments received ahead of time.
No comments were received ahead of time, and I don't see any members on Zoom.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So that will take us to our consent calendar. James, is there anything on the consent calendar that you wish to highlight, or should we wait and see if there's a motion? Or you got something? Okay.
There is one item on the consent calendar that I would like to highlight. Item 4.4. There may be some slight wording changes to the agreement that was included in the board packet, but nothing that substantially alters the agreement. Therefore, or nothing that will substantially alter the agreement before the ED signs. In other words, it will be substantially the same as the one in the packet.
Thank you for that. Director Bagby?
Yeah, just a quick question. I have no intention to pull the item, but I just wanted to make sure on item 4.3 that we're talking about the transit app. We're talking about this guy right here. And I just can't help but make the 30th anniversary of Pulp Fiction. I can't help ask if this is a Royale or a Royale with cheese. But specifically, I'm hoping that we're going to see some improvements in this app. And what I'm hoping is that we'll get a report back on what we get with a Royale with cheese, because right now it's just a hamburger. It's just a plain McDonald's hamburger. I've really tried to use transit, and I find it very challenging and frustrating. So I can't imagine what it would be like for our constituents who are, dealing with challenges. So if you could kind of let me know what the follow-up would be, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we will have follow-up on how that app moves forward. And it's essentially just trying to give those that have the app for free, that don't have the enhanced benefits that come with the Royale paid in-app subscription, giving that out for free to all of our Sonoma County transit users. And to address the topics that you just brought up, we will have a report.
Great. Any other questions? Or does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And we will go to public comment after the motion in a second. Yes. And I would invite any members of the public in person who wish to comment on this item to go ahead and step up to the podium.
Hello, I'm one of those people who rides the transit. Not as much as I'd like to, but years ago, down in the Bay Area, there were people who actually put together a Trans-Bay Transit Riders Union. And we talked about all kinds of interesting things, one of which is, don't you like it, however, in Europe, they still have signs and bus schedules at each bus stop. And you can walk up, you don't have to be there, I'll rephrase it, you don't have to be from there, and you don't have to speak the language, but you can see the time and where you're at and know when a bus is going to come. That's not happening in Santa Rosa, and it would sure be nice to get it going in Sonoma County again for both large cities and the county to have those old style bus stop signs and schedules. I understand that you're going to do this for folks that carry smartphones, and that's a fun thing for them. Good for that. On 4.4, why do you have to pay to get into this coalition? To me, it should be something where they're inviting you and they're glad to have you. With that in mind, I'll also say congratulations to the new executive director for being here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. Do any other members of the public wish to comment in person? Seeing none, I would ask Drew if we have any advance comments or members of the public on Zoom. Thank you so much. With that, I'll bring it back to the board. And unless there are any other comments, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote on that.
Director Bagby,
Aye.
Director Peter Thompson,
Yes.
Director Parton,
Yes.
Director Lowe,
Aye.
Director Reynoso,
Aye.
Director Zolman. Yes. And Vice Chair Hopkins.
Yes. And I want to just say thank you, Director Bagby, for raising the user friendliness of that. I appreciate it. And I think it's especially noteworthy to mention that yesterday was Transit Equity Day. So that's a very good question, I feel like, to ask in the spirit of that day. So that will bring us to item 5.1, and I will hand it over to James Cameron for this item.
Item 5.1 is the election of the 2024 officers and incoming chair. It would start out with the board making nominations for the chair and nominations for the vice chair. The board would need to vote on who the vice chair and vice chair are. Then the executive committee would be something that would be appointed by the chair that then requires board approval. Lastly, there are 3 other appointments that would come into play here that are optional at this meeting or could be at a subsequent meeting. That would be for the appointment of a transit integration ad hoc that requires bond concurrence, a climate funding strategy ad hoc that requires board concurrence, and then lastly, a appointment of a CalCog representative that can be at the discretion of the chair.
Thank you very much. So with that, I would bring it back to the board for nominations. Director Zolman.
Yes, I would like to nominate Supervisor Hopkins for chair and Director Bagby for vice chair.
And I'll second that.
All right. Are there any other nominations on the floor? Seeing none, I will open it up to members of the public before going to a roll call vote. Anyone wish to speak on this item in person? See- Thank you, Dwayne, for that. Seeing none, Drew, do we have any online comments?
I do not see any members wishing to speak.
All right. Unless there are any other comments from my colleagues, I will go ahead and ask you to lead us in a roll call vote.
Director Bagby,
Aye.
Director Cater Thompson,
Yes.
Director Harvey,
Yes.
Director Lowe,
Aye.
Director Reynosa,
Aye.
Director Zolman,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Hopkins.
Yes. Thank you all so much. I will hand the microphone to myself and not change seats. And I'm excited to work with Director Bagby. So I had a proposal as the chair in terms of the ad hoc committees, which is, especially since we don't have a full suite of members present, to ask you to email me if you have, and also James. So I would say email James and CC me, please.
Are we sure we shouldn't nominate the people who aren't here?
That's actually an
very
excellent point. The
touchy.
voluntold strategy. I like the voluntold strategy. That you go to the bathroom, now you're the chair of the board, right?
There you go.
So I think that if anyone is interested in serving on either sort of the transit committee or the climate strategy committee, I think that it probably makes sense to carry over sort of the membership from folks who have served on those similar topics in the past. But even if we do that, we actually still have openings because some members are no longer on this board. And if there's anyone who is interested in serving on CalCog, also please email me. I think that in the past, that has been something that typically the chair does, which I am happy to do if no one else is interested in it. But if there's someone who is super excited to jump into that and throw themselves into it, I would love to support your leadership. So
Actually, that was my question because I didn't know who had been serving and I don't think it wasn't in the staff report. So it's not just typically it's the chair.
Yeah,
Okay.
it has been the chair in the past. It has been Jake McKenzie did it for a while. Chris Rogers was the most recent rotation, and it's the chair's appointment.
yeah, but if there's anyone who's really excited about that and has a strong desire to attend more meetings, please let me know. And I'm there you go. Great. All right. So with that, I think we can go ahead and move on to, actually, we are going to, at the chair's discretion, which I'm going to sort of catch the eye of our attorney and make sure that this is all legal, actually readjust the agenda because Director Reynosa has to leave at 4 p.m. And so we want to take our sort of urgent action items that require a quorum first, and then that leaves the informational items to the end. So I think that we're actually going to start with item 5.5, which is advocacy. And I will and then after that, we will take the other action item, which is the annual report approval. But it is more important to sign the contracts with our lobbyists than it is to approve our annual report. That's what the director tells me. So hand it over to Director Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. The next item on advocacy will cover 3 points. The first is approval of our legislative principles. The next is to receive the legislative updates. And lastly, to approve the contracts with Politico Group as our state lobbyist and MMO Partners as our federal lobbyist. In November, the board approved an RFP for legislative services that did an initial The board also did an initial review of the 2023 legislative principles and considered updates in those principles for 2024. Based on that November input, water conservation was added to our climate principles, and the RFP was accelerated to have staff recommendations completed by the end of December, so we could start to work with the consultants timely to engage on the legislative calendar. An RFP was issued in November 17th. 12 proposals were received. 3 of those proposals were for both state and federal. So it was a total of 9 firms. We're very pleased with the strong pool of firms to select from. After shortlisting the written proposals and conducting oral interviews, MMO Partners was selected for federal and Politico Group was selected for state. Highlights in the January activities reports that are included in your packet include a focus on the 24-25 state budget deficit, and the proposed 24-25 budget includes reductions to 2 major programs that I'd like to highlight to the board. First is the Active Transportation Plan, which is a $2 million reduction in the general fund contribution to that program. That will affect future programming, not the existing programming. So those of you, your jurisdictions that have active transportation funding, none will be taken away. It'll just reduce those future opportunities. The other is the Regional Early Action Planning Grant Program, or REAP program, specifically REAP 2.0, which is a $600 million program statewide. Of that $600 million, $100 million went to MTC. And this is a reversion of that $100 million, reducing it down to $50 million. So to look at how that's affecting the region, we're looking at a $50 million impact. To look at how that's impacting Sonoma County, the funding includes housing preservation, priority sites, as well as some transit transformation projects like fare integration and mapping and wayfinding that are eligible for those REAP 2.0 fundings. The reduction could affect some of the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority programs and the priority program sites, including, bless you, 6 sites in Santa Rosa and 1 site in Rohnert Park and Healdsburg that were approved as part of the program. Also, key legislation is listed in your packet. It's a fairly long list that has been provided by our state lobbyist. I do think that it is important to focus on the climate bond, which is SB 867, the regional transportation measure enabling legislation, which is SB 925 from Wiener, a Brown Act subsidiary body committees, AB 817 from Pacheco, as well as the SMART legislation, their forming legislation, transit consolidation measures, SB 925 from Wahab, and AB 1837 from Papan, and then as well as ACA 1, which is recently passed, that would be going to the ballot at the end of this, or in November. That was the state update. On the federal update that's included in your packet, MMO did do an onboarding meeting with SCTA RCPA staff. We had updates on the 24 and 25 appropriations and grant monitoring, strategizing on the EPA's climate pollution reduction program, and we had the lessons learned from the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, working on which grant opportunities are best for the SCTA and RCPA. With all that report out, I'm just conclude with staff recommends that the board discuss and provide feedback for the adoption of the 2024 legislative principles, provide input on state and federal activities reports, and then approve the contract with MMO Partners. And so MMO Partners is a $216,000 contract that is $6,000 per month for federal advocacy. Politico Group is a $144,000 contract, which is $4,000 a month. The combination of both of those contracts is a $360,000 financial commitment over the next 3 years. And that concludes the staff report on this item.
Thank you very much. I will bring it back to my colleagues for any questions or direction. All right, seeing none, I will open it up to any members of the public in person who wish to speak on this item. Seeing none. Drew, any members of the public via Zoom or emails received?
No members of the public wishing to speak on this item right now, nor did I receive any pre-submitted comments.
Yeah, sounds like Director Bagby has a question.
Yeah, James, since I'm glad you had a chance to kind of talk with them and get to know them. And you're probably pretty aware that, I mean, on this board, and I'm looking at Sandra right now and a couple of other people, we have some pretty deep connections. I mean, I'm serving on the board of Cal Cities, and I'm on the Transportation Communications and Public Works Legislative Committee. And so I would hope that in the future, just like when we did this legislative work in-house, that you know, put us in contact with these folks so that we can help with the other agencies that and lobbying groups that we're working with on a regular basis. So yeah, we just hope that, you know, just use us is what I'm saying. Take up more of our time, please. But that's sometimes where the work happens, is conversations that, you know, off the cuff conversations we have with Cal Cities in Sacramento and other folks. So
I totally agree. Director Harvey?
Yes, is this thing on? Okay. When you find out things, particularly since we've added the water conservation, if we could make sure that we reach out to some of the other Sonoma County groups, you know, what comes to mind is, you know, for Sigma, for the groundwater, and obviously Sonoma Water, so that kind of we have everybody looking at things from different perspectives. And since we're really engaging in this contract for all of Sonoma County, that would be helpful.
Great feedback. I would also add Sonoma Clean Power to that list. We have a really great sort of new legislative affairs person who is really excited, especially to work with Sacramento. And then one thing that I want to mention, following up on what Director Bagby said, was that Executive Committee, we did discuss, you know, the opportunity to potentially take a delegation to Sacramento. And depending on sort of the feedback from our lobbyists, you know, whether or not that makes sense to go to DC as well, but that it can be really effective for us to have those face-to-face meetings and to, you know, obviously bring staff and then maybe, you know, some, you know, a few directors, especially if we can leverage any directors who already have great relationships with some of the legislators that we will be advocating for. So just wanted to mention that as well. Director Harvey?
Yeah, and as a follow-up to that, I know that for the Santa Rosa Plain groundwater, we are piloting a legislative contract. And so there may be some opportunity there in the future to kind of combine resources so that we can kind of use our dollars wisely across multiple units.
Yep. Great feedback. If we've gone public comment, no one else has anything else to say, anyone want to make a motion?
I'm going to be item.
I'll second. And if we, actually, do we need to do a roll call vote if we're all in person? Okay, why don't we, okay, how about we do old fashioned?
When someone's on Zoom, you have to roll call, otherwise
Great, let's keep it simple. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, anyone opposed? Nope, motion carries unanimously. And with that, we are going to go to our next action item, which is the 2023 SCTA RCPA Annual Report, item 5.2. And I believe that Ross will be presenting this item.
Good afternoon, directors. You have received physically the 2023 annual report today. This report provides an overview of SCTA and oops, see if this works, and RCPA activities and accomplishments over the past year. The report features descriptions of these activities, and the digital version, which is also linked in the packet, provides links to additional information if needed. Next slide, please. Try it again.
Oh, that's like, it's working on this side.
Okay.
Wait, you didn't. Okay.
Apologies. I'll continue. So highlights in the report include the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, the Go Sonoma tax major progress, protection initiative work, local project implementation, and the GHG inventory dashboard creation. And we'll try again to catch up here. Thank you, Drew. I've got them all open, of course, it's top left. All right, and SCTA's work in 2023 included numerous planning efforts and programs, including the Safe Streets for All grant, transit integration, Sonoma commute rewards, and the beginning of the process of an update for the countywide active transportation plan. And awesome, catch up here. Projects. RCPA worked extensively with program committees in 2023, exploring the possibility of a climate tax measure and related project priorities. Staff also continued work on natural climate solutions, including analyzing local tree protection ordinances and collaborating with local partners on carbon sequestration and compost application projects. Extensive outreach work was done in 2023 for the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, as well as the Bay Ren Water Upgrade Save program. Also continued to improve water use efficiency in the overall North Bay region. The annual report concludes with 2023 financial reports from both SCTA and RCPA. And I thank you for your time today, and apologies for the convoluted presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions on the report. As I said, you have a physical version there. A link is included in the agenda, and we are looking for approval on the annual report today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ross. Any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I will ask if any members of the public in person wish to comment on this item. Seeing none. Drew, do we have anyone online? Wonderful. So, any further comments or perhaps a motion?
So moved.
All right, and we will take a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No, motion carries unanimously. Thank you for the excellent work. It's great to have a physical copy. It was fun to thumb through it online, but sometimes it's nice to actually have one for your desk. So I appreciate that. So with that, we are popcorning around and we are going to go back to item 5.3, which is the draft 2024 briefing book for SCTA RCPA. And Tanya will be presenting that item.
Thank you and good afternoon, directors. And I do have a presentation. I'll give my colleagues a moment here to bring that up. So just some background. This is a resource that we update each year for the board, and thought this year we made a couple of more substantial changes and wanted to take an opportunity just to walk you through those very briefly, and also invite any inputs that you all have in terms of how we can make this a more useful resource for you and for our committees. So I'd like to give Drew a big thanks, because he was instrumental to making these updates. In fact, it was his idea to make some of the changes. So I really appreciate all of his help with the briefing book. And it looks like we've got the slides up and running. All right, so very briefly, the table of contents. Won't go through that in detail. I'll walk you through the different sections.
Restarting.
Oh.
I'm just going to take this moment to say that if you actually have
Behaving today.
lights and power, you're ahead of all of West County. So, you know,
For sure.
these are minor
For sure.
technical difficulties compared to what's going on elsewhere. Right. That's what we'd be at. We'd be like, okay, here, we're just gonna rip off this piece of paper, go to the next one. You shine the flashlight.
Yeah. So while we're waiting, I'll just cover briefly the purpose of the briefing book, really to give the board and again our committees an overview of how we work as an organization, what some of our key relationships are with other agencies, give you information on our structure, and then talk about what we do. Oh, Drew is telling me to stop.
No.
Keep going?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Should be able to go down.
All right. Excellent. All right. And it is, as I said, intended to be a resource guide for the board and our committees. So So a couple of highlights under the kind of general SCTA RCPA section. We did also update our 2 fact sheets. So we have one sheet in the briefing book that gives you information about SCTA and one for RCPA. And we intend these to be resources to give you kind of the latest view of our key projects and areas of focus. It's also something that if you have an event or a need to take these with you, we'd be happy to have some copies made of just these fact sheets. So I wanted to highlight those. And then in terms of the other components kind of under the general SCTA RCPA section, we've included a list of acronyms. We're often accused of using way too many acronyms. So this is intended to be a resource for you and again, members of the public in our committees. And I don't know if anyone knows what LCTOP means. I didn't know what it meant until I looked at that acronym list. It's actually Low Carbon Transit Operations Program. Don't ask me to share what that is, but that's what that acronym stands for. We've also included a new resource in the briefing book, which is a list of key reference documents with brief paragraphs about what's in each of those documents, when the document was adopted, and a link to where you can find that. Again, trying to make it easy for you if you have questions about any of those documents. And then upcoming for 2024, again, highlighting a couple of our key priorities that you'll hear a bit more about in the work plan section of the agenda, and links to more information where we have that available online. Then the next section of the briefing book talks about our work plan structure at a high level. We'll go through this again in the next item, and our proposed 2024 work plan. And then I've highlighted Bayren Water Upgrade Save on this slide because we've included a fact sheet on the Water Upgrade Save program for you, really because as board members, you have been critical to our success in rolling out the program so far. You've been our key kind of champions and reference points for this program. So we wanted to make sure that you all had information on the program in case you need it in any of your meetings. Then next we have kind of your standard list of the 2024 directors and alternates, as well as an org chart. So you can see what our current structure is and who's in the different roles. And then we have a section with all of our committee information, which shows you overall what our committees are, how they relate to the board, list the 2024 meeting dates, as well as the charters for each committee. Again, if you want more information about what each committee is charged with doing, and then list of rosters, so you know who is on each of the committees. And I think that brings us to the end. So really want to open it back to the board. If you have any questions or feedback, again, this is a resource for you. If there's something that's not in the binder that you'd like to see added, we'd be happy to do that. So I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you so much. Any questions from members of the board? Director Lowe?
Is there a QR code that you could put on this that people could just click it and then open it up?
Absolutely. Great suggestion.
Any other questions or comments? I just want to say thank you so much for the work. This is really, really fantastic. And I appreciate you highlighting the acronyms. That was one of the most helpful things actually when I joined Sonoma Clean Power, because I was even less familiar with those acronyms than I am with these, because at least, you know, some of this is like planning speak, right? We kind of speak that in local government. Sonoma Clean Power is a whole new world, but yeah. So any members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none. Any members online? Nope. All right. Well, that is just, I believe, a sort of receive the report and move on to the next one. So thank you so much, Tanya. Really, really appreciate it. And that brings us to our 2024 SCTA RCPA overall work program, which will be from Executive Director Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. The next item, we're going to talk about what we do here at SCTA, right? Plan, fund, implement climate and transportation projects and programs through coordination, advocacy, and administration. But specifically drill into what we're going to do this year. And there's a presentation that's going to get pulled up here that we're going to have, 3 different presenters talk about. The overall work plan is shown in your packet on page 74, and the presentation here will kind of bring it to life for you and give you a little more detail. It is broken down into 6 different categories. The categories are planning, projects and programming, engagement, communication, administration, and funding. So if we go to the next slide, It's going to show the topics that will be presented that have been picked out of the work plan to be highlighted for you. I do want to bring to your attention some notable new efforts from 2024. Those notable new efforts are the SCTA RCPA strategic plan. RCPA has had a strategic plan that we're in year 5, the final year of that plan, and SCTA has not had a strategic plan. We typically use the comprehensive transportation plan as our guiding document. So working towards an aligned SCTA RCPA strategic plan as part of the work plan. We're adding to our transit integration work what's called MASCOTS. MASCOTS stands for Marin and Sonoma Corridor Transit Service. You'll hear more about that in the presentation, as well as the Marin Sonoma Narrows carpool hours, our Bay Ren liaison efforts, equitable building electrification plan, and lastly, we'll be doing a salary survey to make sure that we can recruit and retain highly qualified staff. So with that, to take you through the agenda, I'd like to introduce Tanya Narth, our Chief Deputy Executive Director in charge of climate programs. So Tanya, please take it away.
Great. Thank you, James. Okay.
All right, I was ready to advance it.
All right, so I'm going to cover the projects and priorities that we are proposing for the climate team in 2024. So highlighted here in green are kind of the key areas that we're planning to focus resources on in the coming year. I should add that this doesn't cover everything the RCPA does. So for example, you don't see our coordination activities. We host periodic meetings with members of your staff and work on grant research. So there's a number of things that we do kind of as background or ongoing work. But really what I'm trying to highlight here is some of those key project and program areas that we'd like to make sure you're aware of. So first, starting with the Equitable Building Electrification Action Plan. We still haven't come up with a great shorter name for this. So if you have any inputs, BC and I would love to hear that. But BC Caps on our team, our climate program manager, is leading this effort in 2024. And he did give an overview to the board of this effort back in December. So I'm not planning to go through a great amount of detail here, but just wanted to highlight that we see a real key important opportunity to work with your jurisdictions to coordinate work in this area across the coming year. We have done a survey of all of the climate action plans, both in draft mode and finished, and we see this as a common theme that's really across all of those plans. So rather than each jurisdiction having to go it on your own and reinvent the wheel, we really think it's important to leverage our work and coordinate work in this area across the county. So that's why we're highlighting this as a major area of focus for the coming year. Next up is the climate funding strategy. So as you recall, we spent a lot of time in 2023 exploring the possibility of a climate revenue measure in 2024. The board determined that was not feasible based on the polling and a number of discussions. And so moving into 2024, we still have the really critical need to increase funding for climate work in the county. And so here is where we're proposing to focus in on a broader climate funding strategy, working with the ad hoc that hopefully will be formed soon. And so we really want to build on the work that was done in 2023 as part of this initiative. A big area of focus will be leveraging our designation as a climate resilience district to advocate for funding to be included in the proposed climate bond that we'll be working very closely with our state legislative services group on. Also to explore other funding options. And this board has provided staff with a great deal of feedback on other options that you'd like us to research and investigate. And so that will definitely be part of the effort. And then lastly, we want to use the project lists and all the community input that we received last year to continue looking for grant funding and opportunities to coordinate work across our jurisdictions to address some of those key project ideas. So then next up is our greenhouse gas inventory and climate dashboard. And BC Caps is leading in this area as well. And we'll be working closely with Adam Garcia on the SCTA team on the dashboard piece of this work. As you know, we do this countywide greenhouse gas inventory every 2 to 3 years. It's kind of our one of the core services we provide. Most recent inventory was released in 2022, and BC is hard at work right now on the next version or next update to the inventory, which will have 2022 data, and that will be released later this spring. And then on the dashboard side, we've received a lot of input from community members and from this board over time that you'd like to have access to this data in a more accessible way, and also to look at other types of climate indicators. And so with this dashboard, we intend to make our greenhouse gas inventory data more easy to access, to slice and dice and evaluate as you like, and then also to look at other indicators that we could include, like tracking EV sales, or pulling in data from other key dashboards that would give you a better sense of how we're progressing towards our climate goals. And then next up is our Bay Area Regional Energy Network. So there's kind of two pieces to this work. And the first piece is around Bay Rent's core energy efficiency programs in single family, multifamily, green labeling, et cetera. And so we are the county lead, working closely with the Climate Action and Resiliency team at the county to do the outreach and marketing for these programs. And Anna Oliva, who is our newest staff member, is really taking the lead in working both with the county as well as implementing the new service that we're calling our Bay Rent Liaison, providing much more direct support to each jurisdiction, to the staff level, to be able to provide newsletter articles and Facebook posts and information that helps do more outreach on these programs to your communities, so that folks really know what rebates and incentives are available to them for these programs, and really supporting staff and getting that information out. So we're really excited to see this new service launching this year. And then lastly, we have the Water Upgrade Save program. Chris Cohn is our program manager for this program, has been working on it for a number of years. We have 2 utilities enrolled, one in Sebastopol, one in Cloverdale, again, thanks to support from this board. And Chris is continuing to focus on scaling up that program. We have a goal of, a couple new utilities in 2024, getting some larger utilities on board, expanding beyond Sonoma County. So Chris is going to be quite busy in 2024, but really a very important program that we want to see expand. And so that brings me to the end of the climate update, and I'll turn it over to Chris Barney for the planning work plan.
Great. Thank you, Tanya, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk a little bit about the major planning projects that we'll be working on over the next year. And as Tanya said, we do a lot more beyond these big projects. So we're involved providing support as we can to your local staff and other staff here in the office as we can, in addition to these projects. So moving on to the first major project is the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. So as James mentioned, this is a guiding document for SCTA, and it really focuses on the long-term goals and vision for SCTA. It includes goals and objectives and a list of projects that we'd like to work on implementing over time. So we'd like to embark on a more technical update for this CTP cycle. And we want to make sure that the plan's still relevant, useful, and represents the needs of the community, local jurisdictions, and this board as well. So the major components of this update will be in updating our current conditions section of the plan. So this is a reference portion that really focuses on data, metrics, and travel conditions, transit ridership, things like that. So we provide this as a resource for ourselves, but also the board and local jurisdictions that they can refer to provide an overall picture of travel in Sonoma County. We also will summarize progress we're making in meeting goals and objectives in the plan. So it's good to have those goals and objectives, but we want to make sure we're making measurable progress in these areas. Some of this progress will be quantitative and some will be qualitative. Also, over the last 5 or so years, there have been many things that have changed how people get about Sonoma County and the region. Things like the COVID-19 pandemic, changing work from home patterns, new technologies are all changing how we move about the county. So we'll definitely address that and discuss that as part of the plan. We will revisit the transportation project list. So we'll work with local staff to make sure all local priorities are included in the plan. This is important so that they're on our radar, but that they're also poised to move up to the regional transportation plan in case there's a need for the project to be included in that planning exercise. As part of each comprehensive transportation plan, we also look at the future vision for the county, including employment and population growth, and look at the performance of the plan over time. And so we're looking at working on this, kicking it off this summer in 2024, working through 2025, and bringing it back for adoption in 2026. So another major planning effort that we'll be kicking off this year is the preparation of 2 community-based transportation plans. So I'll be talking about this a little bit more later in the agenda. But just to give you a preview, the intent of this program is to really engage residents in underserved communities in the region to identify transportation barriers and work together to identify projects and solutions to those problems. So we're looking at 2 areas in South Santa Rosa and Central Roanoke Park this cycle, with the end goal of developing a list of community source transportation projects and improvements that we can work on implementing. The Regional Transportation Plan, Plan Bay Area, and its companion document, Transit 2050 Plus, is well underway. And there's a lot of coordination and review that happens with the Regional Transportation Plan. So MTC and ABAG are doing a lot of analysis. There's a lot for SCTA planning staff to review. So we're reading through pages and pages of documents every month to make sure that Sonoma County priorities and projects are well represented in their analysis and what they're doing at the regional level. And we make sure that MTC and ABAG staff have the right information they need to accurately represent our projects and analyze them as part of their performance assessment as part of that plan. So right now they're at the project performance phase of the plan. So we expect to see more information on that soon. We'll certainly bring information back to this board on how that's going because we want to provide plenty of opportunities for us as staff and also the board to provide feedback on that process. So right now that'll happen this spring, and then the final blueprint, which will include projects, policies, and programs, is scheduled to be going to the MTC board this summer for final approval. So moving on to transit integration. So there are 2 major efforts underway in this area. One is focused on local bus operations, Santa Rosa City Bus, Petaluma Transit, and Sonoma County Transit. And one of the major goals here is to really provide unified branding and focus on the end experience of the transit user. Make it easier to move between these systems seamlessly and get from where you're going on the bus easily. So progress is being made towards a unified website design. So we hope to have more information about that soon. We had an item on the consent calendar today on the mobile application. So there's some progress being made in that area. We'll continue to work on that. And then consultants and Dana Teray, the lead on this project, are working on an integrated transit service plan. So excited to see the results of that sometime this year as well. So moving on to mascots, this is a more regional look at transit service that touches Sonoma County. As James said, this is the Marin Sonoma Coordinated Transit Service Analysis Project. And it's really focused on transit service along the Highway 101 corridor between Sonoma and Marin County. And it's, it'll focus on looking at travel markets, travel flows, and again, focused on the end user experience, right? So how easy it is for transit riders to move between these 2 counties easily and seamlessly. So moving over to active transportation, the Sonoma County Active Transportation Plan is well underway, led by Dana Teray. So she's been working with the project team to develop and update existing conditions, perform technical analysis, embark on some initial community engagement, and come up with a draft list of proposed projects and maps. So that's all a flurry of work that happened over the last year. So the next phase of engagement will really focus on providing input on those draft project lists and maps this spring. And so work will continue throughout this year, and we're looking at a final adoption of that plan in early 2025. So on to the bike share project. So we're very excited about this. Drop Mobility was in the building at the December board meeting. So we were able to see an example of the bikes that will be on the ground this summer. So Dana and the rest of the staff have worked to finalize and execute the agreement with Drop Mobility to have that happen. And she's been working with staff from the Transportation Authority of Marin to talk about schedule, milestones, and branding, and really get this project going. So excited to see those bikes here in Sonoma County. So looking at Senate Bill SB 743 and vehicle miles traveled reduction, this legislation was signed into law back in 2013, so it's been around for quite some time, but implementation has really ramped up the last few years. The legislation is focused on greenhouse gas emissions, promoting infill development, and really making it easier to walk and bike in our communities. So the focus on implementation is really reducing vehicle miles traveled and making our communities more walkable and bikeable. So we've been involved in implementation since the beginning, providing a lot of technical support to local jurisdictions as they're rolling this out and putting together guidance for their communities. But in 2024, the major effort that we'll be undertaking in this area is to develop recommendations for a VMT mitigation bank or exchange program for Sonoma County. So when we were successful in obtaining some Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant funding to actually support that project. So moving on to Safe Routes to School, this is a great program that really embarks on encouraging kids and families to use bicycles and walk to school and feel safe being able to do that. So, and it focuses on education, encouragement, engineering, equity, enforcement, and really getting out and working with the community to teach people how to ride a bike, how to feel safe and make those connections. So the program is led by the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition under contract to SCTA. So really excited to see that continue here in Sonoma County. Really great program. And then wrapping up with Vision Zero and traffic safety. In this area, we're really working towards meeting that countywide Vision Zero goal of 0 traffic fatalities or serious injuries in Sonoma County by 2030. That was adopted in our Vision Zero action plan back in 2022. So we're working with the Vision Zero Advisory Committee to try and do that. And we provide staff level support to that group along with staff from the Sonoma County Department of Health Services. So the major effort in this area for 2024 is to work on our Safe Streets and Roads for All program. So we were able to obtain over $1 million in federal grant funds to develop resources to help reduce travel speeds in high-risk areas. So huge need for doing that. To support that Safe Routes to School plan and develop a countywide plan to help support that effort. To make updates to our countywide Vision Zero data dashboard and also progress tracking as well, so we can track how well we're moving towards that goal. And we've also partnered with the cities of Healdsburg and Petaluma to conduct some localized traffic analysis and transportation safety studies in those jurisdictions. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn things over to David Ripperda from the Projects and Programming team.
All right, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair and Directors. I'd like to talk to you about what the Projects and Programming team is working on in the coming year. So on the planning side, we have the Go Sonoma's 2023 strategic implementation plan that the board approved back in December. We will be working on finalizing that document and bringing it back to you in April for final approval. At the same time, we've been working with local jurisdictions and project sponsors to work on and get ready to execute Go Sonoma cooperative agreements for both the committed projects and the formulaic programs from Go Sonoma. And then we hope to have those in place for the end of the fiscal year to allow projects to start in July. On grant funding, we're constantly monitoring, supporting, and pursuing federal, state, and regional grant opportunities to support projects throughout the region and track funding that will benefit everyone. We're looking at using the Go Sonoma capacity building funding that the board approved as part of the Go Sonoma implementation plan and other sources of local funding to help leverage support grant opportunities. We're looking at a variety of funding sources, including legacy state and federal highway funding sources, the Transit Interstate Rail Capital Program, Safe Streets and Roads for All, and also new programs such as the IIJA programs and Inflation Reduction Action programs, and also looking at earmarks from federal and state appropriations. On the legacy side, for our highway and road projects, we have the Hearn Avenue interchange on Highway 101 and the State Route 116, 121 intersection improvement projects, which are actually in construction and should be breaking ground rapidly in March. Both these projects should be wrapped up by the end of 2026, but I just wanted to make you aware that these are still key projects that will provide a lot of benefits to the community in the next couple of years. On our other projects that we're working on for the Highway and Roads Program, we have the State Route 121 A Street East Intersection Improvements Project. That project will begin the environmental phase and looking at doing a roundabout or traffic signal as part of that project. So we're going to be partnering with Caltrans to pursue construction funding for that project, and we're moving forward on it rapidly. For State Route 12 and Fulton Road, we're working on a study to look at near-term, mid-term, and long-term options to improve safety and mobility for all modes at that intersection, which would include both active transportation improvements and potentially also a future interchange project in that area. We hope to wrap up that study by the end of December. For State Route 37, we're still supporting MTC and Caltrans on near-term and long-term funding strategies and project delivery in that corridor, and also staffing the Highway 37 Policy Committee and other bodies. As part of that effort, we're also supporting implementation of restoration projects for habitat and sea level rise in the corridor. Lastly, to wrap it up for Highway 101, we are working on the landscaping for Highway 101 and hope to finalize the Highway 101 tree planting feasibility study in March and bring that back to you for action later on this year. And we're coordinating with Caltrans on the design of the north segment of landscaping from Windsor to Sierra Avenue in Cotati, and also the south segment, which is the section between Sierra Avenue and Pelham Boulevard South. We're also coordinating with TAM, the Transportation Authority of Marin, MTC, and Caltrans to study the carpool lane hours across Marin and Sonoma counties. Since currently they have different hours, and the last segment through Nevada will be opening to completing construction in 2025. And we want to be sure that that is a seamless experience for everyone in the public as the projects get wrapped up. With that, I'll turn back it to our executive director to wrap things up.
Thank you, David. So with that, we're going to turn it back to the board to make recommendations, provide feedback to our draft 2024 work plan that was just presented on, and we would incorporate the board input and seeking board's approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Bringing it back to my colleagues, Director Harvey.
Yes, I have a question. We had the results of the survey for the climate work and funding climate. And what became obvious from all of that was there still needs to be a lot of public education, that kind of we need to work on that. And it's probably buried in here, but where is that highlighted? I don't see any aspect here for public education. And it seemed like that was key to actually moving some of those efforts forward.
So
Do you want me to answer? That's a great question, and thank you for raising that. I would say currently with the staff that we have and the funding that we have, we're looking at doing that public education probably in two main areas. One would be through the Marin programs. And so Anna, with her work with staff in each jurisdiction, providing a lot more materials and tools that will help get the word out more effectively about the Marin programs and the opportunities those present for, home energy retrofits and upgrades, et cetera. And then kind of similarly with the electrification action plan that BC will be leading, again, focusing on a strong community outreach and engagement component for that. In terms of more general climate education, we don't have specific plans around that or necessarily resources, but I think you raise a really important point that I can certainly take back to the team and see what else could we do with our existing resources, working with Ross and our, events that we do attend to increase that community outreach, because it is very important. So,
Thank you.
Other questions, Director Bagby?
I wonder if, James, you could I have a couple of questions that are a little bit down in the weeds. Maybe you can kind of point to where they already are on the work plan, but, I've been concerned that about how, we're maybe leaving some 5310 funding on the table in Sonoma County, federal funding that specifically is designed to go to, seniors and the disabled. And then also, something that we brought up in meetings before is the Sonoma County transportation money that goes to support Golden Gate Transit, which I think is, historically been very important for our residents and our commuters, but just with the changing changing commute patterns, as well as, we're kind of on the 101 corridor, have become our own work and housing shed. We're less dependent on, jobs that take us into the city. So I'm just, you know, wondering if you could kind of point out where that's being worked on at the staff level, and maybe if I could underline it if it needs to be underlined.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let me start with the Sonoma County, transportation, what's the effort that you're asking about, sorry, not Sonoma County Transportation, Golden Gate Transit funding, right? So there is a funding formula that was presented to this board. So where that's buried in the mascots effort. Okay, so within the mascots effort, we're engaging both SMART, Golden Gate Transit, as well as Marin Transit to look at, what is the right service to be provided. There has been, a letter that's been sent to the executive director of Golden Gate Transit, and we've had monthly meetings of not just the executive directors of TAM, SCTA, myself, and Golden Gate Transit, but also the other 3 bus operators in Sonoma County, the general managers. And there will be a finance subcommittee as part of that will be looking at the coordinated claim and what is the right funding formula for the coordinated claim. This year's coordinated claim, the recommendation to the board for board's consideration will be to stay with the status quo, given the fact that we don't have the data to support exactly what is the best service, where those dollars should be. But SMART's a huge part of it. Golden Gate Transit's a huge part of it, as well as our 3 local bus operators. With regard to the 5310, so that is the competitive funding pot. That Dana Teray is the best person to talk with, and we could do an offline meeting if you'd like with her. But we do encourage, the applications for, many, all eligible applicants to apply for those funds and go after them. If you see strategies that you'd like to see SCTA more engaged in or going after that funds ourselves, we can do that.
I think that the feedback that I've gotten from, some of our non-governmental agencies, and I'm talking about, 3-person nonprofits when I use that fancy terminology, is that it's just far too complex. And I think that the approach that Solano County is taking on this and doing, leveraging those kinds of competitive federal grant dollars, not just doing it on an ad hoc or a regional basis, because it's a need that North Sonoma County needs, West Sonoma County needs, and, grandmas in Santa Rosa, they got to get to bingo. So, I mean, there's a need across our county, whether you're talking rural areas or places where you think that folks are being adequately served for some kind of, coordinated transportation for our seniors and disabled. And if I hear the word paratransit thrown up in that context one more time, I'm not going to handle it very well. So I would like to see us take that on on a regional basis, because I know my city staff can't handle that. I know there's nobody in West County in an incorporated city who can take that on. And so I'd like to see us I'd like to consider talking about adding that to the work plan at some point, because it's a huge need, and we have neighboring counties that are they're taking it on. I'd like to see Sonoma County rise to the challenge. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. And just to add on to before I go to Director Zollman, I've heard great things about a system being piloted in Truckee, which is also obviously a very rural, very remote area that offers point-to-point service. And, maybe this might be an appropriate conversation for I can't remember exactly what it was called, but the transit committee, but maybe transit strategy or whatever the new name of it is to undertake, because I think it's definitely something very worthy of investigation. Director Zollman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, speaking of rural areas like the West County, I have to do a report back. So what would you say the biggest things that's going to help benefit their lives? Basically everything west of the 101, because we hear the 101, but then like the whole West County. I did hear something about 12 in Fulton. There's going to be work done there, but what are the other highlights? I'm sure they're in here, but just kind of the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, West County highlights. Yeah, let me glance at the list. That's a good one. I mean, there is, as far as the work that we do, like the lists that are on, or the information that's there is not, it's not weighted to where like one of those items is equal to another one. So one of those items might take us only 2 minutes to work on, or you know, and a couple of days, where the other ones can take huge amounts. So I do think it's important to focus on the Go Sonoma measure and Measure M, right? Where, you know, within that measure, there is the specific set aside that goes to the city of Sebastopol by formula basis, right?
Okay.
So that formula basis comes out as a, you know, a quarterly payment that goes to them for their local roads. But just specific to West, most of these are comprehensive throughout the entire county, right? So, you know, West County is part of Vision Zero, right? And that Vision Zero dashboard that's there, if there's projects that the West County isn't interested in and they go to the Vision Zero dashboard and they see there is accidents there, those projects will qualify for funding, right? And there is going to be opportunities to take advantage of that. The countywide active transportation plan that we're working on right now does have many projects within, you know, the West County that can be pointed to. There's also, right now, when I think of West County, I'm thinking of our current funding that will be coming to the board next board meeting in March, to look for appropriations for projects where the county and Sebastopol have been partnering together on active transportation funding. I would love to chew on that question a little bit more and just shoot you a little draft email to give you a report out. And I think you'll have a little more concise answer.
Perfect. I got that idea from Director Bagby as far as the rural parts. It's like, we're trying to advocate for, you know, some of that money too. So thanks.
I feel like this might be one of the times when we actually have a majority of like small cities and rural communities on the board, and it's kind of a lovely day. So, other questions to Director Peter Thompson?
If it's a question or a comment, but it's about, you know, last week in Petaluma, there was another accident on Lakeville, which there's probably been 11 to 14. A woman was just broadsided and was probably speeding. And how can that, at least Pine View, be looked at? And because we have to work with Caltrans, the county and the city, to actually close that left-hand turn lane as an interim, as the study goes on to determine what to do. So I know that the city has spoken with you, but I just want to make that comment that we cannot have one more death on that road. So,
you know, on that intersection, there's a long history there. David Ruperta, the staff, is taking the lead on that for SCTA to make sure that, you know, that all of the interested parties are aligned. You know, City of Petaluma has been a leader and has done extensive work at that location. I would expect that probably within the week it'll be closed off, and there will not be access from Pine View. The work will continue with Caltrans, SCTA, the emergency responders, both the fire chief and your police chief, as well as staff. We're all on a call that afternoon, and it's also has. That corridor itself has a $250,000 of that $1 million Safe Streets and Roads for All planning effort to go to Petaluma to study that whole corridor, not just that one intersection. So there's near-term and long-term improvements that are going to happen immediately. And yeah, thank you for bringing it up.
I appreciate that. It's really the short term that I'm focused on today. Thank you. So my lesson.
Yeah.
Clarification. So it sounds like it is going to be closed, the left-hand turn lane, and who is responsible for that? The city?
The
State or the county?
So the city is the one who has the authority for the local connection there, right? Caltrans, and there is a near-term improvement that can be done there fairly quickly by the city, where you don't have to do mainline or Caltrans right-of-way work, right? Because if you just take away that access point where you come out, where all the lefts are occurring, that will immediately reduce it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I really respect your advocacy on that, because when I saw that headline, it's just heartbreaking of how many people, it's awful. And I think it's like, not just near term, it's like immediate term. What can we do tomorrow? How do we sort of
Right,
stop the
and
bleeding?
just to go a little bit further, people couldn't take a left-hand turn, so then they do a U-turn in that intersection, and then there were accidents from the U-turns also. So I mean, there's a multiple components of a problem. So thank you.
Director Harvey?
It really saddens me when you bring those kinds of things up, because a lot of our areas do have to work with the state. We have Highway 116, and it really saddens me that we have to have all these fatalities before Caltrans will do anything about it. It's just like there has to be so many, and then they kind of go, oh, I guess there's a problem there. We need to deal with it. We're looking at, as MACBAC, going to the Planning Commission tonight, is a housing development right on 116, yet Caltrans doesn't want to help with us putting some kind of measure there so that people will be able to get safely in and out of 170 unit development. So I think we have to do something to get Caltrans' attention, that we can't be racking up all these fatalities before they work with us cities to kind of make things safer for our people.
Totally agree. So maybe to add to the work plan, an invitation to Caltrans to come on a safety tour and show how so many of these highways are actually also our main streets, our downtowns, and really try to, work on. I know there's a sort of a lengthy list of where they're supposed to pave and where they're supposed to, have safety improvements. We've been working on the one in Guerneville for 8 years. And everything takes a long time, but I think it would be really great to extend an invitation to Caltrans, and maybe if any of our state officials or representatives from their offices wanted to attend, that's something we could undertake. Any other sort of questions or comments before we open it up to members of the public? Anyone in the public wish to comment on this item? Seeing none. Drew, anyone over there?
No members of the public.
Wonderful. Just to bring it back, just a couple thoughts that I have. I really appreciate, how do we sort of address some of these things that we continually hear about from our constituents? I feel like that was kind of one of the themes of what I heard from my colleagues here. And it's really safety, and also I think access to transit and transportation, especially for seniors who are aging in place, is something that I hear a lot in Western Sonoma County. And I am really excited about the active transportation plan development, happening, and that, sort of moving forward spring of this year, and then hopefully for approval next year. And I would just say, let's really work to continue the engagement in all areas of the county. One of the things that I thought is like, hey, maybe we should have actually like a joint meeting with, the different BPACs that exist around Sonoma County, and really kind of invite our active transportation constituents to sit around the table with us and have a conversation. And another thing that I know that I've talked to you about, James, was I want to see what you all are doing in your cities that are cool, that I want to copy and paste, right? And I've heard great things about Petaluma in terms of quick build projects and other things, would love to talk about how we replicate that. So it might even be fun also to like actually invite some of the, transportation public works directors type folks to do like a speed dating round. We're not talking about like an hour for each of them, because I know they could do that, and just be like, hey, you've got 5 minutes for a snappy pitch of like, what would you want to see that you've loved in your city happen around the county? So food for thought as we kind of do agenda planning for the rest of the year. I would love to do something that really kind of invites some of the advocates to sit around the table with us. And then also like, why are we all inventing the wheel? And to your point, maybe we also go to our neighboring counties and say, hey, what's working over there that we want to, sort of, import into our county, because we're all in this together, and we may as well learn from what everybody else is doing. That's cool. So any other thoughts, Director Lowe?
Just piggyback on that is that I travel up to Humboldt County a lot because I have family up there. And my daughter lives in Fortuna, and the stop signs there had lighting around the stop signs. So I took a bunch of pictures of those. I brought them back. They're very inexpensive. They're solar. And they're the corner near where I live, which is near Fifth Street West, which is a huge traffic corridor, there's school or whatever. People running those stop signs all the time. So we put up those lighted stop signs, and it's amazing how much safer and better, like immediately. It was a very inexpensive fix. I think we bought like a box of them or whatever, but it was exactly that. It was just like, driving through Fortuna one day, just going like, these look clever. What are these things, and then brought them back and now we have them.
I would love to have a title of an agenda item being like cheap stuff that works. You know what I mean? Like that we can do easily. So
Digging the ground.
That's awesome.
All things that usually stop you from doing anything, even trying to put in these lights on Broadway, the Caltrans thing, don't get me started, Highway 12, but, you dig down and then there's all this stuff that no one knew was there, old Comcast things and who knows what. And, so anything you can do that is above ground and easy to put is, preferable.
Awesome. Any other comments? Well, thank you so much. So I'm just double checking as this was, I think, listed as a report. Will it be agendized at a future agenda item for like an action item of adoption, or is just the report that we're?
No, so the feedback that we've gotten has been great, and all of the feedback actually fits into other items that are already on the overall work plan. So staff would recommend approval of the overall work plan, and then the fleshing out that the board just gave to some of those items we will work on.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Move to approve the work plan?
Wonderful. All in favor? Aye. And that looks like that carries unanimously. And if we want to, can we try to get through a lightning round of the last one, before Director Reynos leaves? When do you have like 5 minutes or, okay, can we do a lightning round on 5.6? Is that possible? Because I realize that one actually also has an action and you probably want to be able to go ahead and release your RFPs.
Yeah, that would be great. And
Great.
I can make this relatively brief.
Thank you, Chris.
I have mentioned it as part of the overall work plan discussion, but I did mention that this year we will be compiling 2 community-based transportation plans for 2 parts of the county that we haven't examined in the past, South Santa Rosa Avenue and Central Roanoke Park. So let me go ahead and move through this quickly. So just a little bit of information about what the Community-Based Transportation Planning Program is. It's a regional program that was developed by MTC to really improve access and mobility for underserved and marginalized communities. So there is a geographic focus to the program. So MTC uses census data and a variety of other data sources to identify geographic concentrations of poverty and disadvantage. They're calling these equity priority communities at this point. They've been known as various things in the past, such as disadvantaged communities, but EPCs is the current terminology. So the process as part of the development of these plans is, to get out in the community, to talk to people about issues and barriers and transportation problems in these localized communities, and then work with them to come up with some potential solutions and prioritize those with the end goal of coming up with a community identified list of transportation projects and solutions that can be funded and implemented to improve conditions in these communities. So here is a partial map of the North Bay. I apologize, Cloverdale isn't on here. It's an MTC map, so we keep fighting the fight, but sometimes we need to keep reminding them. So the purple areas on here are current equity priority communities in the North Bay. So you can see a concentration in central Santa Rosa, a little bit out to the West County and down through Roanoke Park, with 2 equity priority communities identified in the Russian River area and the Sonoma Valley Springs area. So we've studied some of these areas in the past, including the Roseland area of Santa Rosa, the Russian River area, the Sonoma Valley Springs area, and Central Healdsburg. So, and here's a map, a complete map of Sonoma County showing the equity priority communities. The blue squares are showing the areas we've studied in the past, and the green squares are showing the areas that we'd like to study this year. So we also recognize that poverty and disadvantage isn't located just in geographic areas. There's poverty and families struggling everywhere in the county, dispersed. So as part of our last comprehensive transportation plan, we did a wide net countywide outreach effort to talk to people throughout the county to identify transportation issues and potential solutions that people identified across the county, not just in these areas. So that's included as an appendix in our last CTP. Dana Teray was also able to look at those older CBTPs and catalog the project lists from those different plans and provide a status report on where we're at there. So if we've implemented those projects and if there are barriers to implementation in there. So that's also included as a appendix to that plan and is useful for going after funding dollars as they become available. So a number of different types of projects are identified through this process, from small projects like individual shelters at transit stops up to regional connections and full transit routes. The public and members of these communities have also identified improved transit frequencies as a need, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, sidewalk connections. Safety is a huge thing, right? We hear about that all the time. Improved traveler information. So how do I get from where I live to where I want to go, right? How do we get that word out? And then safety again, very important. So the two areas that we'll be looking at this year, the first is the Santa Rosa Avenue corridor, really centered on the Santa Rosa Avenue between Highway 12 in the north and Mountain View Avenue to the south. So this includes both incorporated city lands in the city of Santa Rosa and in unincorporated areas as well. It's quite heavily populated with over 10,000 people and 3,500 households. Over 50% of the households in this area have incomes of less than 200% of the federal poverty level, and over 60% are minority population households. So if you've driven through this corridor, you'll recognize that there's quite a mix of housing and other uses, right? A lot of shopping and jobs, but the connections are very fragmented and disconnected. So it's hard to get around if you're walking, biking, or using transit. So we really want to get out into the community and talk with people about what their needs are. The next location that we will be looking at is Central Roanoke Park. This is a location that hasn't been identified as an equity priority community in the past. It's just recently showed up. So there are changing demographics happening in this part of the county. And so this is centered in Central Roanoke Park, centered along Roanoke Park Expressway and State Farm Drive. It's also very heavily populated with over 10,000 people and 4,000 households, about a third of which are lower income and 50% are minority population. And it's quite similar in a lot of ways to the Santa Rosa Avenue corridor. There's quite a mix of uses, but it's hard to get from one place to the other if you're not in a car. So again, we want to get out and find out what the specific needs of those families are. So here's a high-level look at the scope of this project. So we're looking at releasing an RFP to get a consultant on board to help us out with this in February. And one of the first things we'll be working with them to do is to establish a stakeholder committee to help guide the project. And so we'll be asking representatives from each of the jurisdictions involved to serve on that, but also the transit providers, Santa Rosa City Bus, Sonoma County Transit, and SMART, and also other interested parties like the Bicycle Coalition and community groups to help guide that process. So one of the first things we'll be working with them to do is to develop a community outreach strategy and identify the groups and the places and the times we should go out and meet with people to make sure we get the most effective feedback on what people need. One thing I would say is there's already a lot of outreach happening in both of these areas. So we're working with Santa Rosa staff and we'll work with Roanoke Park staff to coordinate our outreach efforts, to have maybe one meeting instead of 4 meetings. So we can meet people at the same time and not spread things too thin. So one of the key things we'll do first is to identify those transportation gaps in area and barriers. What are the problems, right? And then work to identify and prioritize solutions. What are projects or improvements that could help out? So with all that information, we'll develop a final community-based transportation plan for each of these areas, and then present the findings to stakeholder groups, the community groups, and decision-making bodies, including this board and the city councils and board of supervisors.
Great. All right, okay. I'm just worried about Director Reynosa. Can you stay another minute or, okay, all right. Okay.
Okay. So just a few more slides and I'll wrap up very quickly. So this is what we want to do as part of this project. The first is to come up with that list of community identified projects, right? Like, what do you want? So also just as important is not only having that list, but coming up with ways to implement it, right? So what are funding sources that can be used to get some of these things done? Along with that, we'll have the list of issues and barriers that we can continually chip away at. And then the final report and summary that will include all of this information. So this is the type of outreach that we're initially planning on doing. We'll certainly work with the consultant to make sure this is comprehensive. But we want to get out into the community and talk with people, right? Like that's going to be the most important thing we'll be doing. We'll also have a project website to push information out and gather information in. We've used surveys and map-based tools that people can drop points on a map and identify specific issues. So I'm sure we'll be doing that. And then we'll gather information through public hearings and comments on reports and documents as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and wrap things up. So we did ask for action from the board to authorize us to release an RFP to get a consultant on board for this, but we'll turn things back over to you, Madam Chair.
Director Reynosa?
Question. And I apologize if I don't remember the actual bills, but there was a bill that passed that the state is, pushing through low income housing. And one of the exemptions they can have is the limit parking, because their understanding is that low income families do not have a lot of vehicles or a vehicle at all, which is not the case in Windsor. So part of this, and I don't know if this is going to apply, but I just feel like there's certain data missing to be able to report back and show this is not the case. So when you go into these communities and you go into these neighborhoods and developments, is there any way that they could ask that question? How many vehicles do you have in this one household? So something like that. Just, and then, what would it take for you to be able to give up your car? What would it take for you to use public transportation rather than have a vehicle? So some angle like that, I think I really want to, if it's not here, maybe something in the future, something down the road I can get involved with.
Yeah, we can certainly include that. And I think finding out, giving up a car is definitely could be one of the questions, right? Are you having trouble parking, right? What would make it easier to have a single car or get around safer if you are traveling by a car too? That might be one of the needs that we find out as well. So I'll write that down and make sure it's included in our outreach. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, in the interest of time, any comments from members of the public? Any comments on Zoom? Seeing none, I would bring it back to the board for a motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Director Reynosa, for sticking out. And I would love to follow up at some point with where are there other gaps in the county where we need more of this work? But just want to get Director Reynosa out the door to her meeting. All right, and Director Lowe as well. So, but I think we're okay, right, from council, because we don't have any other action items, just going to be report outs. So with that, we will go ahead and go to the Executive Committee report from Executive Director Cameron.
Thank you. We had two items that were discussed at the Executive Committee. The first was the additions to the SCTA funding program Cycle 1, which included $29 million of funding from two different fund sources. Given the timing, the prioritized list that we have from the jurisdictions, and given the timing of some of the projects, staff will be taking recommendations to committees this month on the funding of that $29 million or the recommended programming of that $29 million and back to the board in March. There's two pieces of that staff recommendation that I would like to bring to the board's attention. The first one is a project in Windsor that is a $2.8 million undercrossing that is very timely, is what's currently driving our schedule to make sure that those improvements can be incorporated into the existing Windsor project that is starting construction again. The second component that's driving our schedule is the bike and pedestrian overcrossing in Santa Rosa over 101, which is awaiting a Reconnecting Communities grant. So we currently have two different versions of funding plans pending the outcome of that Reconnecting Communities grant. And then the second item on the executive committee was about state and legislative updates, very similar to the state and legislative update that we did at this meeting. Exec committee provided input on the updates that I provided at this meeting, that we will seek board input on specific legislation of the climate bond, the authorization for the transportation sales tax authorization, it's not transportation sales tax, transportation revenue measure authorization, as well as the Brown Act for advisory bodies in March. With that, that concludes my report out from the executive committee.
Great. Any comments from members of the board, members of the public, online? All right, thanks for answering that for the next few items. And with that, we will move on to regional agency reports. Any reports from our fellow sister agencies? Director Harvey?
Well, I'd just like to highlight for those of you that don't know that Sonoma County Waste Management Agency closed on some property in Windsor, and we will be working towards having a household hazardous waste facility in North County, which has long been needed, so that we can get that stuff out of the landfill and out of our jurisdictions where people are dumping it. So it'll take us a little bit to get there, but first step has been made. We have keys to property.
Thank you for your great work on that. That's really, really exciting. I'm shockingly excited about that.
Now compost and I'll be happy.
Yep, there you go. Director Bagby?
Well, I think our executive director alluded to SMART's Windsor extension, and the email that I received said that we anticipate completion in 2025. And in every email and announcement, we also say pending the weather. And so as soon the day that that SMART sent out that email, kind of, announcing that, yes, we have begun the Windsor extension. And that was kind of the day that the Pineapple Express cruised through. So I'm not going to be making any strong pronouncements about particular dates. That's why we qualified it. And then, of course, the Petaluma North Station groundbreaking was that last month? It just seems like it's flown by, but that is underway as well. And we're just very excited about it. And again, not promising an end date because weather. So that concludes my report from SMART.
Do you have any? No. Okay. Director Zolman? Any? No. Okay. Congratulations on your big pile of dirt. Here you go. A brief update from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. I was sort of moved into the role of vice chair on that board with Chair Davina Hurt from Belmont. And one of our big focuses will be on racial justice and equity, and really trying to focus on those AB 617 communities that are directly impacted by the refineries. But another priority, which is perhaps a little bit more relevant because we don't have any refineries, fortunately, in Sonoma County, is that we will be considering a wood smoke sort of burning ordinance at some point this year. And so would welcome any of your feedback in your various jurisdictions if they fall under the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, which I know you don't. So that's, yes, and many of mine don't also. So, yep. So I think that is it. So that will move us on to, there was sort of an FYI item, the advisory committee agendas. Were there any, I don't think we have any comments on that, nothing to say. Okay. And then SCTA, RCPA activities reports. Oh yeah, and actually quick invitation, any members of the public want to comment on our regional updates or on the advisory committee? Seeing, I just keep looking at the one member of the public who is here. I'm sorry to put you on the spot every single time, but thank you for attending. I really appreciate it. And with that, we will go ahead and move into the activities report, which I think is going to be Ross, BC, Chris, and then Shauna.
Thank you very much. Hello again. This will be a brief summary of SCTA RCPA communications activities in January 2024. So first off, the Safe Streets for All press release. We put that together and distributed it on December 13th, promoting the over $1 million award that was announced to privatize surface transportation safety. That grant is, of course, part of President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law. And so we were happy to get the word out about that. Consultant Fair and Pierce led a listening session / focus group with the youth program hosted by Latino service providers. Participants were asked about their experience with all modes of active transportation and transit and what it would take for them to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. 14 people participated and valuable feedback was received that will help to guide the next draft of the countywide active transportation plan. And I was, just personal note, I was there and some really good feedback that we didn't normally get from our some of our other outreach efforts. As mentioned, staff completed the annual report. You have that. And we're also working with Caltrans partners to plan groundbreaking ceremonies for 2 upcoming Sonoma County projects, the Hearn Avenue interchange and the 121-116 roundabout. So both events are tentatively scheduled for March. However, we're meeting about that tomorrow. More information will be distributed soon. Lastly, and something to possibly spread the word on, SCTA is partnering with the Transportation Authority of Marin on a bike share program. And there's currently a survey available to help select a name for that program. So a link to the survey can be found in the newsletter that we sent out on Friday. It's also on the front page of the SCTA website homepage. So feel free to take a look at that, give your opinion. We're working on getting that going. Please let me know if you have any questions about these or other communications related projects.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I think it's BC up next.
Okay, good afternoon, board. For the record, my name is BC Caps, Climate Programs Manager with RCPA, and I'm here to present on some of our recent climate-related activities. A number of these items have been mentioned in the presentations today about our overall work plan, so I'll be brief on some of these points. First off, in the area of our work on building energy and decarbonization, we hosted a collaborative meeting with staff from Sonoma Clean Power and the county's Climate Action and Resiliency Division to coordinate our long-term building decarbonization program efforts. So we intend to have these meetings on an ongoing basis from here on out, and the input from and the work at these meetings is going to lead directly into our countywide equitable building electrification plan that we're developing. In addition, on building energy, we're continuing to track the lawsuit against the City of Berkeley's municipal natural gas ban, and are working with both regional and state efforts on kind of update approaches to all electric reach codes, which are designed to be more resilient to legal attack, and that with looking forward to the next code cycle with thinking about implementation of those style of reach codes. On our work around our greenhouse gas inventory, I'm continuing to work on the analysis for that inventory. We expect to present those results to this board later on this spring. Currently, or in the last few weeks, I've been focused on building energy and transportation analysis, and we'll be moving on to the next sectors shortly. Also been working very closely with Adam Garcia, our data analyst, in building the dashboard, our online climate dashboard that's been mentioned. We will have a version of that available very shortly for internal staff review. We'll be debuting it to staff here internally and then working with jurisdictional staff around the county to get their feedback before presenting that also to the board later on this spring. We have a couple of projects in the arena of carbon sequestration. Our project partners and participating producers have recently wrapped up compost applications on a number of agricultural and community sites as part of our carbon sequestration through compost application pilot project. That work was funded by the county's Climate Resilience Fund, and work is starting on the final report shortly. We've also been fairly active with a collaborative known as the Sonoma Marin Agricultural and County Climate Coalition. This effort is receiving funding from the USDA's Natural Resource Conservation Service, and we are working with a number of the resource conservation districts and a number of other partners on basically looking at regional supply chains and a marketing campaign for the creation of climate smart agricultural products that are designed to both reduce greenhouse gas emissions and sequester carbon locally. Next, on our work around the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, known as Marin. Let's see, our program specialist, Anna Leva, continues to work on developing a countywide climate action tracker. This information is being cross-referenced with our adopted climate mobilization strategy, and it is a compilation of basically all of the adopted climate action plans, adopted and proposed climate action plans from all the jurisdictions. So we're basically looking to create a master list of all the projects that are being currently proposed throughout the county, and looking to those, basically then looking for coordination and overlap of where we can work on joint efforts across jurisdictions, again, to try to kind of select projects that really would benefit a number of our members. I mentioned earlier the county's Climate Action and Resiliency Division. They are our implementation partner for much of our work on the Bayron programs. They have continued their workshops on their in-person workshop series, including a very successful induction stove workshop that they held this past month. And we are hoping to invite members of that staff to present to this board next month to talk to to present around the customer pathways to electrification of homes, as well as to get back to the board and answer a number of the questions that were actually asked of this in December when I presented on our electrification action plan. So we've been working with them to basically think through a lot of the questions that were brought up and kind of provide responses on those. Moving on to the Water Upgrade Saves program. The program implementation continues in Sebastopol and Cloverdale, and efforts are moving forward to recruit additional utilities from across the whole Bay Area. Currently, there are 4 leads in Sonoma County, 2 in Alameda County, 2 in Solano County, and 1 in Santa Clara County. And we hope to be able to announce new participants in the program sometime later this spring. Very close on recruiting new utilities for that program. Nothing that can be announced yet, though. Also wanted to mention that Chris Cohn, our Water Upgrade Saves program lead, is also participating at the state level with discussions around on an inclusive utility investment tariff on-bill program, something that's similar in nature to the way the Water Upgrade Saves program works. And so she has been participating, really trying to bring in the lessons learned. The lessons we've learned from the water program, as well as really highlighting the issues of equity and equity renters and low-income residents within that work. Funding opportunities, it continues to be something that we are continue to be focused on. We work closely with the county's CARD team and put in an application to the Caltrans Sustainable Communities Grant Program. That would be to develop a countywide EV charging plan. We're waiting to hear back on that. And there was also a flurry of work the past few weeks on providing input to the US EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. The funding for this comes from the federal US EPA, but then is implemented locally at both the regional and the state level. We provided input to the Bay Area Regional Climate Action Plan, which is being led by the Air Quality District, and also provided input to the California Priority Climate Action Plan, which is being led by the California Air Resources Board. The Bay Area Regional Plan will cover all of central and southern Sonoma County and the jurisdictions within that portion of the county, and the statewide plan will actually cover will be the plan that will guide efforts in the northern portion of the county that's covered by the Northern Sonoma County Air Pollution Control District. Finally, to wrap up, we hosted a couple of meetings these past few months, or the past few weeks. Hosted our Climate Action Advisory Committee on January 12th and our members and partners meeting on January 22nd, where we actually had a focused presentation to highlight the work of Zero Waste Sonoma and the Waste Management Authority and all of the incredible work that they are doing on climate-related efforts. So that concludes my activities report for this month, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions from my colleagues? All right.
Thank you.
Seeing none, I think Chris is up next.
Yeah, and this will be pretty brief since I've already talked a lot about our overall work plan items. So I'll just touch on a few of the items I haven't spoken to yet. So first off, I just wanted to highlight a few of the things that Adam Garcia, our data analyst, is working on. He's doing a lot of work behind the scenes that are supporting all these projects. So one of the things he's been working on the last month or so is really digging in with our advisory committees and consultants to chart out key refinements to our travel demand model and some of our other analytic tools. So this includes looking at our travel model administrative guidelines, which is a document that guides how and why we use these tools and data, and work on a white paper that looks at recommended improvements and enhancements to our travel demand model and other forecasting tools. So a lot of work on that. Adam's also been working on land use updates for our travel demand model and supporting those efforts. And then working on developing a variety of different data dashboards. We heard about the Vision Zero data dashboard today, and also the greenhouse gas inventory, but also working on dashboards that include information on travel behavior, information, and other safety data. So moving on to the active transportation plan, I have already touched on that, but an administrative draft plan has been completed for the city of Cotati. So Cotati's out ahead of the pack in that group. So excited to see that move forward. Moving to regional planning, the latest bit of information we've been able to take a look at in that effort is the Transit 2050 plus existing conditions and gaps analysis, maps and information. So digging into that and providing feedback and advocating for Sonoma County projects. Also at the regional level, the Priority Conservation Area program will be going forward this spring, and we're anticipating a call for projects with some funding for conservation projects and access to conservation projects being available. And so we've been working with MTC staff and local planners and local staff to make sure they're aware of this. And then wrapping up with Safe Routes to School. So they're always very busy, the team there. So over the last few months, the highlights there are providing pedestrian safety lessons, some bicycle rodeos, family learn to ride lessons, middle school bike clubs, and student mapping, which are useful for identifying travel routes and prioritizing infrastructure improvements. So a lot going on. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. And Shauna's up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will also be brief. There is a large activities report in your agenda packet, but I did want to bring your attention to a couple of items. First of which is the 116-121 intersection improvements, and AT&T work is underway. They are nearly done and expecting to remove the utility poles after having undergrounded the utilities. That part will happen first, and the last part is removing the poles. And as was mentioned earlier, the groundbreaking ceremony is trying to be scheduled for mid to late March on that project. On the Hearn Avenue interchange project, tree removal has been completed and the groundbreaking ceremony is tentatively scheduled for the 15th of March from 10 to 12. And finally, just to reiterate, it was spoken about a couple of different times, but there has been established a State Route 116 Lakeville Highway Safety Working Group. And that group had met 3 times last week. Unfortunately, the second 2 times were after the fatality collision that occurred. But we will continue to work with Caltrans and the city to make sure that we are addressing as many of those issues as possible to try to find a solution.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions? All right. I think that brings us to the end of our announcements. Thank you all so much for sharing all of the wonderful work that's going on. We've got a busy year ahead and look forward to working on it with you. With that, our meeting is adjourned.
Yes.